Good evening. My name is Lauren Gary. I'm an Associate Director at the Center for Public Leadership at Harvard's Kennedy School, and I'd like to welcome you all here tonight to an evening of presentation and discussion about innovation, architectural innovation in particular, at the intersection of design, disaster management, and education. Tonight's event is being co-sponsored by MIT's Special Program for Urban and Regional Studies, as well as the Center for Public Leadership. In addition, we'd like to acknowledge the support of the Unico Facilities Service Company, which provided shuttle bus service here to this event. I'd also like to thank members of the Boston Filipino community for this wonderful meal supplied here outside. If you haven't had a chance to partake, I hope you will at the end of the evening. We've got 4 guests here with us tonight to talk not only about the impact of global warming and climate change on the people least prepared to be able to deal with its effects, namely the poor in the developing world, but also about an inspiring competition to generate architectural designs to mitigate the effects of climate change. There will also be occasions here in between speakers for questions from the audience. We have 2 microphones here down front on either aisle. When we stop and to start taking questions between the speakers, if you have a question, feel free to just come down here to one of these 2 microphones, and we'll acknowledge you and have a chance to ask your question. Our first guest tonight is Professor Adil Najam from Boston University's Frederick S. Pardee Center for the Study of the Longer Range Future. And I hope you'll tell us a little bit, Professor Najam, about what that is and what that looks like. Professor Najam, among his many experiences and engagements in this field, is also a leading author of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, otherwise known as the IPCC, which was awarded the Nobel Prize this past year. And in addition, he wanted me to make sure to mention he's an MIT alum. Professor Najam.
Thanks, sir. Thanks a lot. Thanks very much for that wonderful introduction, and thanks for having this event, and thanks for the wonderful competition that led to this event. So it's a great pleasure always to be back at MIT, and great pleasure to be talking about this. I don't want to take too much time in my presentation. What I've been asked to do is to set up the problematique of climate change and development. And then we have people who know much more than I do about the issues particular of going towards solutions, particularly in terms of habitation, in terms of architecture and planning, and so on and so forth. As you rightly pointed out, I am an alum of MIT and of the Planning and Urban Studies department. So this issue is of importance to me. The pictures you see flashing on the screen are flashing for a reason, because I think those are the many faces. That's, by the way, what sustainable development looks like, not that, the last one. That's where we are now. That's what the future looks like. So just in case you wanted to know. But those are the manifestations of climate change as a policy discussion. We think of it too much in many ways as a technical discussion between chemists. But it really may well be the defining human problem, not only of the future, but in some ways of the present. You really cannot escape the climate issue anywhere from any discipline. I want to touch on 3 questions, and I might not actually come to all 3 questions. Can people still hear me here? Okay. So I might not still come to 3 questions, but there are 3 questions, half of which is cut up there, but that I want you to think about. 1, why is how and where we live important to the issue of climate change? I would even posit to you that it may be the most important thing to the future of climate change, is how we live and where we live. We usually think of climate change in terms of energy production and in terms of cars and so on and so forth. But if we really start looking at our own behavior, I think the question of how we live and where we live is really central to the challenge and whether we'll do something about it. I want to talk a bit about the nature of globalness. And I say this because we're talking about very local solutions. But you cannot understand the local without understanding the global in which it is contained. And I think we very often do not do that rightly. And climate is a particularly important issue because it is the quintessential global issue of our times. There's no other issue that I think is comparable in globalness, in the sense that even if we so wanted, the greatest powers on the earth could not, even if they so desired, solve it on its own. So it is linked in many, many ways. And third is this question which has just changed there because I'm going to change the order. Where is our understanding of the links between climate and development? So let me rush through this and not take too much time. I want to tell 3 stories, and I might get to at least 2. Very short stories, very briefly. The first is a story of planetary designs. Second is a story of stumbling forward, because I think climate change policy is a good story. We usually think of it because environmentalists are depressing people generally. No, seriously, you go to an environmental class, most students wear black. I'm not making it up. I have got 15 years of data here. but climate policy, I think, is a good story because we have stumbled forward. Our understanding is better, and we haven't solved it. But we are at least talking about doing so. And the third is a story about roadblocks. The first is a story that is a slightly inspiring story. The second is a slightly depressing story. Actually, it's the other way around. But the third is the only story that's important, because the third is a story not yet written, and stories not yet written are always superior to stories already written, because you can write them yourselves. And that's really, I think, what this competition is about. Indulge me. It's late in the day, we've had terrific food, so give me a little craziness latitude. Imagine you are on a different planet. Choose your own planet. And you have been given the assignment to write in 10 pages or less a country report on the planet Earth. Like the World Bank writes on Nigeria and Kenya and Pakistan and Philippines. We think of countries in various ways. If we were looking from another planet down on Earth, and looking at it as if it was a country, what sort of a country would Earth be? If the world was a country, what sort of a country would the world be? And we do this all the time for countries. I would posit to you that if indeed the world was a country, it would be an extremely poor country. I can go through the numbers, but won't. By every measure, GNP, Gini coefficient, GDP, inequality, all sorts of, it would be a poor country as a planet. I would posit to you that the world as a country would not only be a poor country, it would be an extremely divided country, unequal country, like the champagne cup. Right? That's the UNDP speak for inequality. The distribution would be like a champagne glass, 20% of the richest would control 82% of the wealth, as opposed to a beer mug, which is what you want. Right? It would be an extremely unequal country. I would posit to you that the world as a country would be an extremely degraded country. Its climate would be changing, its water would be not worth drinking, its air would be polluted. I would posit to you that the world as a country would be an extremely insecure country. Insecure not only in Iran, Iraq and things like that, but insecure in water insecurity, insecure in climate insecurity, insecure in food insecurity. It would be insecure in multiple dimensions. I would posit to you that the world as a country would be an extremely poorly governed country. This is, if you ran any country the way we run the world, that would not be global governance. All animals equal, 5 more equal than others. I would posit to you that the world as a country would be an extremely unsafe country. Again, in every dimension of the term. Why am I doing this? To depress you? Not to depress you, but because I would posit to you that when you think of a third world country, this is the country you think of. All of those are the characteristics that you think of when you think of third world countries, and therefore I would posit to you that our world is a third world country. And therefore, if you're going to manage this planet, you have to understand how third world countries operate. I don't want to take too long, but I want to just throw out a few ideas. Why does this matter? Why does this matter in terms, actually let me skip that. Let me skip that, even though it is just because I want to not take too long. People recognize that picture? I ask my students, it's 2 elephants. I ask them what they're doing. They give me an answer, I tell them it's not that sort of a class. They're actually fighting. They're actually fighting. I find it cute because out of the metaphor of conflict comes the metaphor of cooperation. We ask what is environment. The reason I put it up is the question, what about the environment, cannot be answered except until you answer the question of development. And these two things which we have till now seen as opposite, conflictual, environment versus development, one of the worst questions ever posed, neither of them can be resolved until you resolve the opposite, the other. We never ask that about other policy issues. We don't ask, okay, we can have good health or development. Which one do we take? We never ask that as a policy question. But somehow, we get it in our heart to ask good environment or development, as if it's a zero-sum game. And the good news there is that we have actually come a long way in our understanding of the links of the two. The next speaker will elaborate on this, but here is some things which I think are now even beyond the pale of normal debate. First of all, in thinking about climate change, one of the things that is fairly common is we generally know how it happens. The IPCC got this Nobel Award, and I'm very thankful for all of that. But the fact of the matter is we've known the science for at least 20 years and probably longer. The world took long to sort of come to the acceptance of it, but we've known the science. So we know generally how it happens. Not only do we know generally how it happens, we generally know what will happen if it happens. Again, you don't need to read the whole thing, but we know what will happen to water, what will happen to ecosystem, food, and so on and so forth at various degrees. We generally know that it is happening. There are uncertainties, but the point I want to make is we do not need to get caught up in the uncertainties. What we know is far greater than that which we do not know. And that which we do not know should not be an excuse for not doing what we need to do. There are people who want the smoking gun, and I've found the smoking gun. There's plenty of evidence. Something has changed. You cannot fight empirical data. And the point, therefore, I want you to leave you with is that it is no longer a question of environment or development. I'm going to just skip to the last slide if I can. And again, I apologize for taking longer. I did have other things, but the next speaker will probably cover those anyhow. I think the most important thing that's happened is we've moved from a discussion of mitigation to a discussion of adaptation. Mitigation is simply what can we do to reduce the problem? Right? What can we do so that carbon goes down, we reduce the problem? Adaptation is what do we do when the problem hits us? There are essentially only 3 things you can do about climate change. You can mitigate, resolve the problem somehow by reducing carbon. You can adapt, get used to it, or you can suffer. Third is not a policy option, the first 2 are. In some ways, it is very sad that we are talking about adaptation, and it's very sad that we are talking about all of this. Because what that means is we have given up on mitigation. We've given up on the idea that maybe we will lick this problem before it comes. The fact that we are doing this says we have come to the conclusion that we will have to do something about it. However, what adaptation does, and let me just leave you with this thought, what adaptation does is that it turns climate into a development problem. Show me an adaptation project and I will show you a development project. Mitigation could be resolved by climate policy. Adaptation cannot happen, simply cannot happen, except through development policy. And that gives us both the challenge and the opportunity. The challenge is that the locus of action is now in the developing world. Adaptation is not a future challenge, it's a current challenge. Fishermen in Bangladesh are suffering from it right now. They have to find new livelihoods. That's the challenge. It's become a developing country challenge, not an industrialized country challenge. Our job is just to produce the carbon. Their job is to suffer. The opportunity is that it allows us to rethink what we mean by development and how we do development. And if you do this right, then maybe we can rethink how we do development, and I think that's what you're going to talk about.
Is this mic on? That was...
introduce you and we'll take maybe a question. If you have a question.
No, it's perfect. We need to say, don't even introduce me.
You know what? Great, okay.
Thank you. That was great. Well, my name is Bill Reed. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm an architect and practicing in the sustainability field for 30 years, one of the founders of the LEAD program. And I'm delighted to follow up on Professor Najem. And I'm going to bounce around with some slides to, I hope I can do this with somewhat elegance here, is to start out with the question where Professor Najem left off, moving from design to development. The word development is a very powerful word, and we do need to develop. Development does not mean to occupy the land. The word development means to create new potential. The etymological root of develop is to deveil, to reveal. The role of development should be the most honored profession on the planet. We've forgotten that role for the last 150 to maybe 500 years. The opportunity we have to develop is to heal. We have such a negative connotation on that word that the environmental community and neither does the development community understand what they have. So let me speak to that now, moving backwards. Masanobu Fukuoka, in his book, The One Straw Revolution, quotes, it's my favorite quote, "An object seen in isolation from the whole is not the real thing." So when we think about sustainability in terms of disaster, in terms of objects of buildings, disconnected from its place, we will never solve the problem of sustainability. Sustainability is not a technical solution. Sustainability is a living system solution and has two realms. It has the global realm and it has to have the local realm. We typically we see pictures like this, maybe not this one, of a building that functions like a tree. That's an impossibility. A building, this tree, in fact, what's wrong with this picture of this tree? Anybody want to hazard a quick guess? What's missing? Soil, roots. Out of context, this tree is not alive. It needs all the stuff of life to make it work. So when we talk about high-performance buildings or disaster preparedness in terms of buildings alone, it's like talking about a high-performance liver. The liver, as Elizabeth Sahtouris, the evolutionary biologist, says that a liver outside of the context of the whole body is pretty meaningless. A building outside of the context of its ecological systems is a meaningless one and not able to address the systems of life. So let's take a quick look at, is there a pointer on this? Okay. Maybe there is here. There's one. Okay. Right now, most of the work in the sustainability realm is here. Somewhere between conventional practice, we build our buildings just one step better than breaking the law. You may have heard that expression by Randy Croxton. To conservation, high-performance design, green design, limiting the damage approach. If we work our way up this line, we think we may, if we think with this logic train alone, a 30% energy-saving building or a building that uses less potable water or is survivable must mean that if it's 100% survivable and has 100% energy efficiency and uses no potable water in its use, etc., that must mean we've reached a sustaining condition, which is a conservation condition. Sustainability, or life, as Enrique Maturana describes it, is the process of becoming. If we're only looking at it from a technological perspective, we will never achieve this line of neutrality. In fact, it's impossible to achieve a line of neutrality. This basically will allow the system will still continually degrade as long as we are only thinking about a technological solution. We need to move above the line into restoration and regeneration. This is a living systems approach. This approach, without that approach, will fail. This technical approach, without this living approach, system approach, will also fail. The two are needed together to see the whole. This happens, restoration and regeneration happens locally. These larger technical systems, global climate change, et cetera, potable water, air quality happen on a global basis. This whole slide is what will allow us to reach a sustainable condition. To give you an idea of, does that make sense? I just wonder if I'm going way too fast this evening to get this in. let me give you an idea of the difference between restoration and regeneration. Restoration does not mean what we typically think it means in terms of restoring a system to its original condition. There is no original condition in evolution. We're never restoring something to its original condition. What we are doing is restoring a riparian system, a wetland, an ocean beach, or woodland to a system of a system that has the ability to self-organize and evolve. It's a small system, and we're actually bounding it and saying, you behave while we go out here and screw it up. Regeneration looks at a larger systemic perspective, multiple systems, holons and holarchy, if you're familiar with that term, and asks us to think not only about what we can restore or give the gift of self-organization. Regeneration is another level higher, which means, in the literal definition, to create anew, or to be born of a new spirit. This is a story, a quick story that will give this illustration about what is potential here, what kind of potential we can create on this planet again, because we have degraded every square meter on this planet. Now our role is not just to stop the damage, our new role is to begin to heal. And this is a ranch northeast of Santa Fe, New Mexico. On it, in the last 200 years, there is no record of running water. It's a desert. The fellow that bought this land was going to restore it, which meant getting rid of the grazing animals, planting some native species, calling it, putting some gabions in, the arroyos, to reduce the erosion, and calling it a day, because we don't understand nature. We put nature in parks. We go outside of it. So he then heard of a different kind of approach, not just letting nature do the work, but actually participating in nature. The permaculture movement is one way to look at this in terms of a systemic approach to living systems. And he invited Bill Mollison over and a couple of his colleagues, and in a few days they looked at three things: meteorological systems, geologic systems, and cultural systems. And to make a long story short, they found that this had been a desert for the last 5,000 years. 10 inches of rain, 100 inches of evaporation. So that was no surprise in the desert outside Santa Fe. When they took geologic samplings, just taking a backhoe into these arroyos, they found underneath a couple inches of dirt rich humus that could only have come from the bottom of ponds in the desert not too long ago. So that was a head-scratcher. Thirdly, looking at humans' interaction, they found that Bill Williams and his mountain men came south from Colorado in 1800 to trap, what do you think? Beaver in the desert. So this was a different ecosystem 200 years ago. In 200 years, we had forgotten what life was like here. But by doing the research and looking at the way the land used to be, we can bring back that potential. And in the space of 3 days, they put, the first reaction was to bring back beaver to the desert. Well, that's not going to work. So they decided to become analog beaver. And they put up a dozen 3-foot-high earthen check dams where beaver logically would have built their dams. And within a year and a half, there was a permanent running stream on the site. Within a year and a half is all it takes nature to recover. If we start looking and participating with life as co-evolutionists and not occupiers. And that's the distinction. Anybody want to hazard a guess? Do you understand how that happened? No? Confused?
Well, was there water somehow already there that was not being trapped?
Yep. Basically, all the clues I gave you, I think I gave you all the clues. It's a riddle, but it does snow and rain in Santa Fe, in the desert, about 10 to 12 inches a year. But if you don't contain it, it sheets off and evaporates. And what the beaver dams do is hold that water long enough so that it actually saturates the ground, raises the groundwater table, and you have a stream again. Now, that is the beginning of regeneration, creating something anew. What makes it regenerative, truly regenerative, is every farmer in the valley is doing the same thing. And there's now a raging, frothy stream where there was no stream 10 years ago. We can bring back these systems. So, what we need to do is I'm going to give you one more story. Do I have time for one more story? About how we need to begin to function as co-participants with life and truly develop to create new potential. This is the Baja Peninsula. We know it as a desert. 400 years ago, it was a scrub oak forest in areas. The Spanish were very literal in how they named these arroyos and wetlands and mangrove estuarine systems. But within 50 years of coming, they planted row crop agriculture, introduced grazing animals, ripped the estuarine system down and cut the trees down, and within 50 years it was a desert in this area of the mid-Baja. And the evidence still exists. This is the remnants of a mangrove system right there, and we were sinking in that muck. Way up in that sand, way up above, you can still see remnants of these systems. There is the remnant of the mangrove estuarine system that we mapped, filled in by eroded sand from 400, 350 years of bad interrelationships with that place. The environmental community would say, you must not be here. You are exceeding the carrying capacity. And they actually may be right in cases, but it is not an either-or situation. The opportunity is for humans to participate. And the question is, can we bring forth new potential? Well, what existed 350 years ago can be brought forth again. But the only way it's going to happen with humans developing this place with the right attitude. Not occupying it, but developing it. And so this developer went from a typical new urbanist community with fake concrete Venetian-like canals to sell property to shifting their thinking to match the configuration of the mangrove estuarine system and making it a living system. The biological lab, CBDOR in Mexico, the biologists were so happy. Well, one guy was almost in tears. He said, this is the first time we've ever brought back an estuarine system in Mexico. Now, there are other places that have done this. But the way this was done was through a developer bringing back humans to help tend the wild. And a fundamental shift that's required of us is to not think of ourselves as putting nature outside there, but is to help us understand that we are actually part of co-creating and potentializing nature. Yes, there are limits. Yes, there are areas that should be wild. But in general, what we have damaged, we can begin to bring back. And the mangrove estuarine system, the sweet red, white, and black mangroves are actually going to be tended by these occupants so that they bring back the seed bed. Every hectare of mangrove estuarine system provides 500 metric tons of fish and shrimp to the Sea of Cortez. It is the incubator for the Sea of Cortez. So our role, and in addition, the developer was able to make more money from selling these homes, too. So it works both ways. How can we create and heal as part of our living process? It means that we need to be engaged with the places we live in a deep understanding. This project here, from the perspective of understanding flows and patterns, is a wonderful project that I haven't looked at in great detail. It's an expensive building to build, and I can understand why this one received probably the first, I think this is first, is that right? But I encourage you to really look at this design because they are beginning to get at the idea of working with, let me just flip back here and summarize this, working with the idea of patterns and experience, living system patterns, not simply fragmented knowledge. So the opportunity is that we certainly need to work down here and stop the damage and slow down the degradation, but that is insufficient in itself. The next level is, of course, working with life on its own terms. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. I just want to say a little bit about Bill's background. Bill Reed is a principal in two design-related firms, the Integrative Design Collaborative here in Arlington, Massachusetts, and also of Regenesis, Inc. in Santa Fe. He has been a guest lecturer at both Harvard and MIT. He was also one of the original co-chairs of the LEED technical committee since its inception back in 1994. So Bill's been a part of the movement for more environmentally responsible design from the get-go. Any questions so far for Adil or Bill from members of the audience? If so, I'd invite you to come down. If not, there'll be other opportunities later on. Okay. Our next speaker, Elac Diaz, originally from the Philippines, is currently a Master of Public Policy student, a mid-career master's student at the Harvard Kennedy School. He's also a Reynolds Foundation Fellow, which is a fellowship, excuse me, at Harvard University that supports students to come study at Harvard's Kennedy School, Graduate School of Education, or School of Public Health, and to focus on social entrepreneurship. Back in the Philippines, the organization ELOC founded, Pier 1, has provided transitional housing and or job assistance for more than 200,000 maritime workers. ELOC has also been the recipient of the first prize in the MIT's social enterprise track of its business plan competition. And he and several colleagues from Harvard were also finalists in this year's Harvard Business School Social Enterprise Business Plan competition. The Millennium School Design Competition, the winners of which are here on display tonight, is ELOC's brainchild. And so ELOC is going to come speak with us now about the origins of this design competition and also a little bit more about climate change in developing countries and also how this winning design will be implemented later this summer. ELOC.
I'd like to thank you for your patience and time for me to be here. My professor once said, if there's something that bothers you, it probably bothers some other people. And if you can come up with a great product, then you can start a business. But never turn away from something that bothers you that's a systematic change, because if you can solve it, you can make a difference. And basically, this is what I felt when I was working for UNICEF. It was not the number of classrooms we were building, but more of the classrooms that were getting destroyed. Basically, with stronger typhoons, the old ways of doing things were no longer valid. In Nato, Camarines Sur, this happened in about 6 hours. 1,200 classrooms were blown away. What took 10 years or more to gather funds to do in cement, steel, and glass basically were all destroyed. And to make this clear, how I felt was the fact that, maybe there's another way. And maybe since this is such a problem, maybe globally, if we call people to attention, then we can come up with these solutions. So I want to show you the genesis of this program. Thank you. In a video that we made, so you can better see why this difference has to be made.
Our home, the Philippines. How can one country be so blessed, yet be so burdened by disaster? Why do earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tropical cyclones, tsunamis, and floods constantly threaten our nation? A quick look at this map reveals that the country hosts a high number of danger zones, including 22 active volcanoes. Also, our location along the Pacific Typhoon Belt makes us vulnerable to typhoons and tsunamis. On the average, the Philippines is victim to 20 typhoons every year. From January 2004 to June 2005 alone, the country registered 4,500 deaths, 650 missing persons, and 15 billion pesos worth of damages. Even with the billions of pesos that the government uses to finance reconstruction, the vicious cycle of destruction recurs every year. With your help, we can stop this. It's time our country took a different path to recovery. How? By building a stronger foundation. The NDCC, together with My Shelter Foundation, United Architects Philippines, and the Private Sector Disaster Management Network have taken the lead to launch the Be Better, Build Better program. This effort believes that for a stronger nation, we need to build stronger schools. Why schools? Because of our children. Filipino children spend more than half of their waking time in schools. Consider also the fact that more than 90% of primary students go to public schools. Schools are our kids' second home, so we need to make sure that where they learn remains safe. Finally, schools also serve as transient haven for disaster victims in times of trouble. With these issues in mind, the Be Better, Build Better program lists 3 important objectives. First, to raise people's awareness regarding disaster management. Second, to come up with the most innovative disaster-resilient school building design. Third, to make the school building design the country's standard. To help realize these objectives, we propose the Millennium School Global Competition, followed by a national disaster awareness campaign, fundraising events, and, last but not least, the construction of the model school itself. The first component envisions to innovate how our school buildings can be made safe, as well as improve the quality and standards of how these structures are built. It will be an open international competition. Invitations will be given to reputable architectural schools, associations, and organizations worldwide. The fourth and final component of the program involves construction of the winning school model from the open competition to be built in Natusangay, Camarines Sur. Through this program, the private sector can assist in upgrading and modernizing the Philippine public schools. It's a win-win situation for all. Preparedness remains our most effective strategy in minimizing the adverse effects of disasters. The Be Better, Build Better program will revolutionize the way we build our schools and how we prepare our children for the future. We need your support to help make this nation a safer place. Are you willing to join us in our commitment to save and improve lives for the sake of our children and our country's future? We hope your answer is yes.
When I started the Kennedy School, I heard a very, impressive speech by Dean Elwood, and he talked about acting in time. Acting in time basically said, why don't people think ahead, make provision ahead? Because later on, the costs sometimes are too heavy to bear. In fact, we see this in the States with New Orleans. In the Philippines, it never occurred to me that this was the same way, in the sense that when I came in, I thought that what in cases of disaster, what people wanted was immediate aid. And so I made a survey at the start of my year at Kennedy, and I was surprised that as I was going down the area, serving about 12 communities, they did not want so much aid, as they didn't also want as much, the medical care, as much as they wanted a school, a better school. And I could not understand this, how this concept came out. Until I started asking them, why do you need schools? And they said basically, well, when everything goes to hell, our houses are not strong enough to withstand these typhoons. In fact, we don't have the money to build out of cement, steel, and glass. And the place that we run to are the schools. If the schools are not built well, we have to go to the next town, and that is where the casualty starts mounting. So this was the beginning of acting in time for the developing countries. Basically, if we're going to talk about climate change, especially about carbon in the atmosphere, we must also look at the people who have to suffer because of these changes in the situation. People who are, I would say, the least able to adapt and the most vulnerable. By building better schools, we will be able to shelter the people And the more people that are sheltered as the passing of the storm, the less we will need in aid. Another aspect of this was when we interviewed the governments and found out how they were spending their funds. Because of the rising typhoons, more and more of their money was going not into infrastructure, but into aid. Something that was consumable, rather than something that could be invested in concrete terms ahead. So we felt that this was something that they would readily accept. Lo and behold, it took us about 6 months to even break down the door of the Department of Education. Their idea was, if we build the schools cheap enough, if we bid low enough, put sand in the bricks, put a simple piece of iron on the roof, then if it breaks, it gives us another contract to repair. But this did not go well. This went well for a number of years, except for 2006, when Reming came in and in a 5-hour storm blew down 1,200 schools. Then the nature of the game changed. The governor actually said, well, this is not something anymore that's under the table or a business. This has something that completely we have to start changing for the better. So in one area, they actually gave us a school that was damaged. And from this area, we decided to say, okay, for the first time ever, the Philippine government has given us a carte blanche to do whatever we want to do. The worst thing to do is just go to a contractor. Why don't we ask the world if they will come forward and accept this challenge? What was the challenge? Let's build it typhoon-proof. What was the challenge? Let's build it earthquake-proof. And by the way, since we're all these dreamers and unreasonable people, why don't we make it sustainable? Why don't we make it cooler? Why don't we make it more energy efficient? We were not sure people would respond. We put up a website, we got people involved, and they started coming in. I never realized how many architects out there was just looking for a bridge whereby if they can contribute to the developing world, they would gladly lend their skills. Today, aid is not anymore in terms of donation. It has gone far beyond that. Now aid comes in terms of intellectual wealth. Only then can we start coming up with technologies and better ways to meet the challenges that the developing world so desperately needs in this time of crisis. I will now be talking about the winners. I would call them the most unreasonable people. People that came to the challenge and actually came up and surprised us. Bernard Shaw once said, the reasonable man adapts to the world, but the unreasonable man adapts the world to himself. And it is these unreasonable people that give us the power to change the world. I will just be transferring. The first awardee, honorable mention, is from Japan, and his name is architect Fuyuki Makino. And he sends his message. He could not be here. I'm very happy to be one of the winners. As an anthropologist and an architect, I've been studying relationship between living styles and space. It was a very good opportunity for me to propose an architectural model with my people-oriented perspective. My proposal would be to provide not just school buildings, but opportunities for local people to think about improving their own life. I'm grateful to the judges who appreciate my idea, as well as to the local people who have offered me this chance to make a difference. Thank you very much. I will be showing some of his works. Yeah, it's in the architectural. We had 100 works that were supposed to come in, but they're actually now in Ohio. So we had to prepare all of these slides today. But while we're waiting for this, we have another honorable mention here. But the best thing here is they're here to tell you their story. They're here to tell you their story, what transformed them to answer this call from halfway around the world. And it would be a pleasure to have architect Suzette to come on over and tell us the wonderful designs that you presented here today. So maybe we should play the video. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that afterwards.
Well, thank you, and we're very honored to
The video.
be among the winners here in the Stockholm Bridge. My role is part of a principal at a firm called Jacob, and we use this competition to really get our younger designers and architects interested in really making a change in the world. And part of what we did was really create a studio environment and have this work with the younger designers and really try to do this entirely on our own time. So for those of you who are still in school or who are used to staying up all night, for those of us who work every day, and it's very unusual to find a group of 3 young architects who are willing to stay up all night and really put the effort into this competition because of the importance that they felt it was. And I'm really proud to be part of a company and be able to support them in that effort. And we're very lucky to have them here with me. And they are Ben Backus, Brian Novello, and Mohammed Hossein. And I'd like them to come up and say a few words about what inspired them to really put their heart and soul into this. And I'm just glad that I could be here to support them in this effort as well.
We had our boards actually in a presentation, but first I'd just like to talk about how we, I guess, started the competition. Brian is actually a third-year student at the New Jersey School of Architecture, and he comes into the office on his breaks, winter breaks, summer breaks. He came in for winter break, and I had been really dying to get into another architectural competition. And I talked to Brian, I said, and I was also talking with Mohammed at the same time, saying, look, we got to do something, guys. You know, let's do some research and let's find a competition and put a proposal together. So Brian diligently scoured the internet and found this was one of the first competitions that he found that we all really thought would work really well, and it was really nice to see a competition with such a clear, positive social agenda of really helping these people in this remote location in the Philippines. You know, we really enjoyed reading about the country and doing research about the Filipino lifestyle and culture. And they really have severe problems with weather. Typhoons, tsunamis, earthquakes are just a constant threat to their way of life and all this destruction. So what really intrigued us about the school when we were approaching the design was this duality of the program. It is a school in its heart. It is meant to educate these young minds, but it also, in times of disaster, needs to function as a shelter, and it needs to do it well. So our design focused on trying to create this shift between these programmatic spaces. The way we accomplish, is there a laser pointer on this?
No, no.
Thank you. So the way we accomplish this is we have a series of operable folding panels, as you can see, on the facade. And these are actually counterweighted so that the inhabitants of the building can open and close the whole outer shell of the design and get some wonderful natural ventilation because they don't have mechanical systems that we have, that we enjoy, environmental control systems. So that was a key point. And when this space is opened, it really creates a I just want to show you the images that we produced. this is going to be this would be the predominant use of the space as a school. Most of the year it would be open and sunlight would flood the space. You know, it would be naturally ventilated, and the children would have a nice place to learn. But in times of you know, hurricane approaching, they could easily batten down the hatches and transform it into this pure A-frame structure, which has very little protrusions, and debris would not be flying right through the air, because most of the destruction in the area was caused by metal sheets or pieces of wood flying through the air and destroying their infrastructure. So when this building is closed in the closed position, it creates this aerodynamic A-frame that really lessens the wind load, the lateral load on the building. The wonderful benefit of doing this design was to also create this open public space on the exterior with these bleachers, because we, you know, in our research we discovered the Filipino lifestyle is very into activities and soccer and sports, and this wonderful form of kickboxing meets volleyball. And we really enjoyed reading about that. So we wanted to give these kids a place to have an event space where they could have lectures or just simply lounge outside studying. So when the panels are open on the exterior, you can see this wonderful space that's created. Let me just move forward here. So a lot of our concepts are shown on this board. The multiple configurations, I think, was very powerful. We didn't get a chance to develop this further on a three-dimensional level, but you can see the modularity of design allows it to be shifted into different configurations to adapt to different site conditions and create different spaces. And another key component was this modularity in components and adaptability to other sites, which you can see this main school volume that's similar to buildings that are constructed in the area. They can actually retrofit existing structures with this folding wall design and these bleachers, which we felt was a really powerful idea for sustainability. A lot of their concrete post and beam system constructions now could be enhanced, so they wouldn't have to reduce their existing infrastructure. They could just modify it and make it better. I mean, that's really, we developed this board in-house, and I mean, that's essentially the core concept. So, yeah, I appreciate your time, and if ELAC would like to continue, or Brian.
I guess.
Brian, actually, I would like Brian to say a few words, and Mohammed.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for the opportunity for all of us to speak here today. I guess I would like to say something about our own motivations to do this project from my own personal perspective. As I said, I am a student, a third-year student at the New Jersey Institute of Technology. I'm also a practicing architect. Well, practicing architectural designer, I'm sorry, excuse me. Getting a little ahead of myself here. But it creates an interesting condition from my perspective, where oftentimes I work at school and I'm bound by living in a conceptual world, and then I come to work and I'm always faced with real-world challenges. And this competition really, I guess, gave myself, Ben, and Mohammed the opportunity to kind of link those two different worlds, which oftentimes we find hard. How you can take conceptual ideas and be able to bring them into real-world solutions for the benefit of maybe even an entire nation, a group of students, schools. And it's funny because right now in school there's an interesting parallel. In my school, right now I'm designing a pre-K through 8th grade school in Newark. And just before this I was designing a school for the Philippines. And it's funny that I have these two programs that by typology they're the same, but by program they were completely different. I mean, the school I'm designing for the Newark is a 400,000 square foot school. This is 4 classroom modules. But it wasn't the differences between these two projects that inspired me. It was the similarities. The idea is that you want to give the students natural light. You want to create environments which stimulate education. And you want to provide natural ventilation. And these different ideas, these different human elements that really what Ben, Muhammad, and I like to focus on in our designs, the human aspect to design. And I just wanted to say a few words about that and really say that that's where we want to take our architecture and our design and always be aware of the human element. I hope that's conveyed in our project here today. Thank you.
Sorry, I won't take much time. Just, I really loved the fact that you called us unreasonable. It's really, I would say, inspiring. The fact that we are here, we all stand on a common ground that we see reality as recognizing a better idea and believing in it and keeping with it till it becomes the new reality of tomorrow. Thus, tomorrow will always be better than today. And just seeing again this competition with such a clear, positive social agenda, it really drew us to it, and we were very interested to really contribute, and we're really pleased with the other outcomes of it too, and again, we're just happy to be helpful in this world. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. It's actually you honor this competition. This competition, just some background, 31 years ago, the first ever competition in the world was actually done in the Philippines. It was an international competition, once again, for a problem that was bothering the world at that time, which was called the Tondo Foreshore Competition. People were streaming in from the provinces to the city and creating shanty towns of an extent that was never seen before. And so what happened was they threw an international competition and said, well, if this will be where most of the people will live, then there must be a better way. In 1976, 2,000 architects from around the world answered the call. And this basically became the basis of what we know now as habitat, self-build housing. At that time, they had windmill systems to help irrigate planting areas within the city. Some of the most amazing designs. And so we thought, what better to call people together again than one of the greatest challenges, which is what was expressed by our two main speakers, which was climate change. And at the same time, I think that environmentally friendly structures should be available to all. It is a right for people to feel healthy, and especially children to be able to benefit. And it doesn't have to have always the high-tech, but maybe the low-tech, high-net impact. I'd like to just briefly thank our architect from Japan. Basically, sorry, this is, I think, okay. So basically using an infrastructure of container vans, which had a very industrialized appeal, but at the same time could be stacked and could have green roof applied to it. We saw him as one of the honorable mention. Okay, so for our second place, We actually had his speech in the package, a video in his package. So basically, oh wait, sorry. I'm just, what his, sorry, this is third place. What his design was in times of strong winds that the infrastructure would allow wind to go through, and therefore would have a special joint system wherein the roof would be able to release the pressure that was inside it. Our second winner has given a note basically to that first and foremost, it was a pleasant surprise for him to be informed that he got second place. He rooted his proposal in the concept of responding to winds rather than resisting it. Oh, sorry. Sorry. This was the last one. So not only will it pass through, but the concept of sanitation was important to him. So sorry, this is the second one. And so hence it's called Dancing with Disaster. Solid, yet with a touch of green, was their adopted posture. Instead of using conventional concrete blocks, which represent quite a lot of energy and little chance of reuse, we opted instead of modular W-frame made of steel for its main support system, maximizing surface area as a trademark response to tropical climates. Thus, our structure will have coconut lumber floors, which is permeable to air exchange, and is raised above the grade. It also responds to the possible local flooding while allowing the space below to serve as an emergency storage area during refugee center mode. Oh, sorry. The light color roof, as per available, uses long-span galvanized steel with a deep V profile which maximizes roof purlin spacing, following the concept of a smooth aerofoil angled roofs of the building blocks facing each other to define sloping hump form in its section. And on the main structural form and the green sides, our idea evolved to the final state that you can now see in these boards. We are confident of our chosen responses. Not only additional basic challenges in the technical issue, but also expressed their presence in elegant form. Sorry, it was supposed to be in a video form to explain this better, but what they wanted to do was break up the winds and therefore had a very irregular form to the structure. Our winning design was from Malaysia, wherein a surprising percentage of the construction was done and made out of a readily available material, which is bamboo. And I have here her letter. I would like to thank you all. The success of our team, would like to thank the team of assistants in my office here in Kuala Lumpur. The competition gave an opportunity for my team to address the need to build sustainably in typhoon-affected areas in the Philippines. The solution we proposed is very much rooted in the past, but new in its application. Our idea revolves around modular building system using locally available material. This is inspired by the timber vernacular house found in the Philippines and much of Southeast Asia. The most striking thing is perhaps the use of bamboo as its main material. Bamboo has the ability to flex in strong winds and its ability in the local region to be made available as the ideal material as a wind-resistant structure. Thank you very much. More than the solutions here is the fact that we are the trend of looking for solutions that is needed in the developing world. That more and more, the old ways of doing things, where we used to build our infrastructures by the seashore, open to wind, by trade routes, are no longer applicable with the time of climate change. How do you move people that have already a lack of homes? We need a whole new blueprint. And this hopefully will be the beginning of the forum of what needs to be done. We thank the architects, we thank those people that have believed in us. We thank the Center of Public Leadership and the Reynolds Foundation for making this possible. So thank you very much for all being here. And the designs will be displayed in the Walt Museum, all 120 boards, within the next week as the package arrives. Thank you very much. We're now open to questions about the exhibit and at the same time to our distinguished speakers about the challenges we face ahead. Yes.
Maybe I can just speak loud and hear it. I was wondering, what is the next step with the winning design? Will you be taking it and when will you begin construction, if that is actually on the horizon?
Well, what's amazing is when we started this exhibit, we started it as to engage people in a roundabout way to talk about climate change from a terms of a survival mode rather than just a carbon reducing mode. And so because of the results of this competition, we received a call 2 weeks ago from the President of the Philippines. And basically on the 23rd of this month, she's inviting us to do the full representation. She has given us the first funds to actually build the winning design. So the full winning design will actually be applied. Now, how I look at this is simply a matter of time. There are other towns and communities and governments that need this kind of design. So this discussion is not just about the Philippines. The discussion is global. And this is the gift of the Philippines as to initiate this kind of discussion, but at the same time, it can be used anywhere in the world. Maybe not all the same design, but maybe a new idea in using solar light better, in an idea of using typhoon resistance better. So think of it as a dream that this will be the beginning of the first encyclopedia of a building system which basically we do not have, which is in the developing world. Maybe it's just too expensive to keep on building in cement, steel, and glass. Maybe it's too expensive to keep building the same way only to be destroyed. And so what you see here are components of that system that one day architects can just open up a book and find out how can we make it greener? How can we make it more resistant? What if we have to use bamboo instead of living in tents for the next 2 years? What if there's a better way? So this is what this is. Much more than just an idea. It will now be implemented, but at the same time, let it be the disruptive force that hopefully will give the solutions to how to house most of the world's people that are in these climate hotspots. But even better, what if we have to move large amounts of people and we have to look at a better way? This is the start of this discussion.
How much this project would cost to build the schools for the town?
Sorry, the 15 schools that we have to build?
Or just one, just to get an idea of what are the costs involved.
Sorry, so what you're asking basically is how much it will cost for the winning design.
Yeah.
Well, we're looking at it a bit retroactive because it's our first time to actually build it. So what we did was the government has given us 10 million pesos, plus the leading television company has given us another 3 million pesos. And so we will start building the school. And then based on the cost of materials, we will start developing basically an idea of, there's no costing yet on this, but relatively the architects, especially the judges, have received. It's actually in the package that I do not have right now, but they did it in terms of two things. One is affordability, but second was also opening up the reason of the architects that over time it could be less energy used. Over time, there will be less health problems for the children. So there's many costs that the architects have put in that I could not answer at the moment because I don't have it at my hand. But if you look at it, you will start noticing that it is much cheaper in the sense that we don't have to keep rebuilding every single year like before. I wish I was more specific. I don't have it at the moment. Would you want to question the people that have actually, one is to make the challenge, and that's the easy thing. Another thing is to answer that challenge, and I think that journey, that it's a journey of leadership that maybe you would like to ask a little bit of our guests here today. Does anybody?
I'd be interested to, if I could ask, you three on your school design, and it goes back a little bit to the costs. Have you guys put some thought, and maybe you answered that but have you put some thought into the actual dollar cost for your school, and what percentage higher or lower would it be than a typical school in the Philippines? Absolutely, we did consider cost as an issue of design. One of the things we tried to do was remain within something that, we don't do a lot of construction in the Philippines, being here, so we had to wrap our mind around how they would typically construct this type of a building. So we wanted to keep it relatively, it's a complex idea, but it should be relatively simple to construct. We kept materials that are readily available in the region, and by viewing some of the photos that were posted within the competition website, we could tell that concrete post and beam construction was just a typical construction over there. And if there was some way that we could improve that and perhaps use the existing infrastructure and adapt it, that is where our real cost savings would be. And also, like Elex said, with these buildings being constructed to a higher standard, the replacement and the lifespan of the buildings would be incredibly increased. Because now I believe some of their buildings, they just when a storm comes, they're destroyed. If they're able to withstand that force, the amount of money that can be saved and reduced that is required for aid for all of these disasters is where the real cost savings is. So.
Yeah.
Did you consider the impact of flooding in some of the designs? Because we have a lot of central plains where rising water is also a problem.
The competition is site-specific to the land that we were given. There was an area that was hilly that water would come down. You would see in some of the designs that, as I was reading a while ago, that some of the areas, the area is actually raised. What happened basically here is we gave them in the booklet the cost of cement, the cost of materials, and the probable rainfall, the situation that they would face. So there are solutions that were given in the more than 100 designs that came about. So there are solutions that most of it was on an elevated platform. Some of it also you could be converted into storage during time that was the dry season. So there were many ideas like that, but I think they were addressing a lot of the considerations on the paper. So the considerations basically were cost. It had to be something that the government could afford. It had to be something wherein it was innovative or something that could be replicated in other areas. The consideration basically, of course, was more or less that the replacement value or the shelf life of the building had to be longer. But most importantly was the fact that also most of the children, the reason they always say that they drop out was, they have to go to work or that, they don't have enough nutrition. But a large percentage of that, it's just too hot to go to school every single day. It's just too hot to be in an oven every single day without insulation. It's just, they have a hard time, especially in their consistencies as young individuals, to keep on going to this kind of situation. If it's not like here, like too dark, turn on light. too hot, turn on turn on your aircon. It's just basically the fact that, there's no money even to turn on lights, so there's 60 of them cramped in a small area. The aspects of flooding, I don't think were that addressed in this issue because there were no flooding areas, but I think some of them did have some kind of flexibility of site use. Andrew.
One of the issues that you touched on in your speech, and something that is a systemic problem in the Philippines, I feel, is government graft and corruption.
Right.
One of the things you mentioned was how a lot of the subcontractors will do a substandard job, use substandard materials, so that they can keep on, getting another contract to rebuild or fix things. Have you taken that into consideration, with this project going forward? How do you ensure that that doesn't happen to these structures as they're being built?
Well, what I saw was just a crack in the door, and I took it. It was the first time they ever gave a chance to build whatever you wanted, as long as we had architectural and engineering guarantee. So I took it. And basically the reason for this is because one of the largest other group that constructs in the Philippines are non-government organizations. And one of the large people that construct also are international groups. So they come in, they build the same thing, square, 1960s, flagpole in the middle. And when it breaks, they build the same thing. And so what we're trying to do here is, if the government does not catch on, which I think they eventually will, because they will see how they can multiply what their money can do, making it cheaper, more durable. But I think what's really my goal was to have some kind of discussion with the international groups to stop building the same way every single time, because one thing was to cash burn, which was to build, but one thing was to start talking to us and saying maybe you could build better so that the structure lasts longer and there will be more beneficiary to the children. So there is money being spent. What we're saying is let's spend it better. So if the government does not catch on right away, and I agree, there will be a lot of entrenched interests, but it's better than not saying anything at all. And the second thing also is I had to do this on a global basis, because when we tried doing it on a local basis in terms of implementation, we would always be in a way silenced. When I say silence, the contract, after you do an innovative project, that will be the end of it. But lastly, my hope really is for the next generation of Filipinos and architects in the developing world to have this. So we're going to put it on the book and we're going to put it online so that at least they have one place where they can start looking for what can be done in their own regions. Believe it or not, the other 90% wants to know what they can do. It's just they don't know where to go. They pick a little bit of everything, but this is the first time we've just gathered everything into one school problem and did something about it. So I think an idea whose time has come, I think we'll just find a way to knock over the traditional ways of clamping innovation down. I just want to say that if education is important, then we should do absolutely everything possible to get from one point to the next. Now, if this is a better way to lower down the infrastructure costs, then there's more money for teacher, there's more money for the programs. And so this is not just an infrastructure cost, but this ties into everything. If you can save a little bit, there's more for other things. Lauren, sorry.
What are the plans for continuing the competition to generate designs for different parts of the developing world affected in other ways by global warming?
There are two avenues that we're going to be doing. One is we're now looking for Africa. So this year will be too wet, too windy. Next year will be too dry, too isolated. On the third year, we're planning to look to Bangladesh, flooding, monsoon. Believe it or not, the call will have solutions. I'm becoming more and more a believer of this kind of unreasonable people being out there, unreasonable architects, believe it or not. And I think this is the front line of doing it. So I think we're going to go maybe to Nepal. So we're seeing how this thing goes, but we want to focus on schools, which seems to have such a neutral quality to it. It's like we have less, when we talk about housing, new kind of low-cost housing, we seem to have a whole lot of people going against us. But when you talk about schools, suddenly we have this neutral ground where we can change things. So if this is a school, this is a house. So their second way of doing it is we're working with Gawad Kalinga, which is like a habitat system, but with a values-based system. And so we're saying now that we're building the school, let's build a village around it. And we're going to be inviting architects again to try to change it. The point is, we cannot stay stagnant, because if we stay stagnant, we're just creating more and more, the same solution to the same problem. What we need, in fact, is not just improvement. We just need a radical change. So not even teaching people how to build anymore. We just need to change the whole building industry for the third world. And this is the beginning of that discussion, which is, we don't need, piece by piece of improvement. We need to come up with the actual designs. And the best part of all is when you prove it, when people stand forward and they prove it. I mean, how can you doubt that, there can be another way? The best thing is to show them how it's done. And then less and less, naysayers will come to the floor. So hopefully this will be a new way to do schools in the developing world, not only for climate change, but also, around the country. And I just want to say, I keep on saying developing world, but the truth is, wherever you are and you're poor, you'll be the first one to be hit by this kind of devastation. So let's make a difference. Yes? Yeah, please.
If word gets out that there's a really good school that could save lives, and then the folks start to move in, and so how would you deal with turning away folks or kids? Well, it's like if people go there to live and have the best school and a good shelter. So
what I understood is when they find the shelter so good that they just want to stay there rather than leave.
Yeah, and also, what if folks outside of that town start to move in? Well, it's like if word gets out that is a really good school and that it could save your life, and so
oh, you mean in terms of capacity? Well, okay, that's a question that we will face when time comes. But the point is, each mayor has to deal with his own constituency, and so if one mayor does something better than the other mayor, then you will start having this competitive nature, my school's better than yours. We don't know, but I think that it's not such a closed-in vision. I think when you give leaders at least a place where to go or a direction where to go, that I think that they'll take it. And if not, then the enlightened ones come first, and then they'll convince others just by the majority or just the effort of reason that this is the better way to do it. So I really look at the good side of the human nature, and just like climate change, that people will step up, and with environmentally sustainable building, people will step up, and we see this kind of change. It's never been done before in a larger sense, but I think people will step up to this challenge. And if you're saying that people will move there, as you know, that usually they spend about 2 years to reconstruct their lives, or if a little less, but this is a much better place to live. They'll find a way to co-live in a better place rather than having no option at all. The other one that I've seen really is people just braving the storm with pieces of metal sheets. And I think it's just, everybody has a civic responsibility. It's just not a lot of people answer it. The people today, I think, in terms of architecture, it's a very heartwarming thing to know that people feel for people that have no other way to get in contact with them or hire them. than you know, in a competition like this, and they've answered it. So we'll get to it when it comes, but the first thing it says, build it. We'll see how, you know, we'll see how everybody looks at it, and we'll publish it. We'll publish it and in a free database so people can see what to do. So it will be the start, you know. As I said, you know, it could be like a long voyage, but, you know, as they say, the Chinese say as well, you know, it begins with a single step. So everything begins with a single step, and this is just it. I don't know, I have a vision where we're going. It's just, this is just the first step of that. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure for you all to be here, and hopefully the competition will become bigger and bigger every year, and we will actually have the posters in, and we'll have better food. We'll have more and more food. The food was good, sorry, but we'll have more and more food. So let's give a big hand to everybody that helped us. Thank you very much.